They say that news broadcasting began when Stentor stood before the gates of Troy and to the besieged forces therein yelled stuff through a horn. Think of us as Stentor, yourself as Troy, and the combined worldwide resources of Newstopia as a massively engorged horn. We're ready. Come, blow me.
Nuke Nuck Jet, Sean Micallef, and this week on Newstopia Tonight, China hopes foiled terrorist plot story will distract from torch relay fiasco. Hell unrepented on child crucifixion edict, and Nelson deflects talk of leadership challenge with Machiavellian skill.
Oh, well, I've got nothing more to say, or just have a nice day.
Well, welcome back to the Prime Minister. Mr Rudd's recent performance on the world stage made that of other world leaders look positively passé. You know, and incidentally, I think it's great that we're hitching our wagon to the Chinese. I think it's always sensible international policy to become very good friends with people who can kill you. Let's face it, the US is a fading superpower now, and we're right to move on from it, just like we did before with Britain when the empire began shrinking. We should admit this about ourselves. We're attracted to rich, powerful countries. Australia is Heather Mills to China's Paul McCartney. A young, beautiful, vibrant country seduces an ageing, out-of-touch, massively wealthy country and has to sleep with them for trade purposes. Not that I'm suggesting that Paul McCartney would ruthlessly violate anyone's human rights, although apparently he was pretty mean to Ringo when they were recording the White Album. Perhaps a better comparison for the Australia-China relationship might be the Anna Nicole Smith-J. Howard Marshall union. The octogenarian oil billionaire won over by the blonde lingerie model with enormous breasts. Although it must be said that relationship did not end well. Perhaps the Woody Allen-Sun Yee-Previn partnership is a better May-December example. The younger Sun Yee, never afraid to criticise her older and more experienced partner. Woody occasionally responding with, "Sun Yee, is that any way to talk to your father?" Anyway, it's often said that all Rhodesias lead to Zimbabwe, but the failed experiment in majority rule is still a long way from the strip-mined bastion of colonial rule dreamt of by Cecil Rhodes, a dream of a glittering corner of a multifaceted British Empire Del Monte, presided over by a young, naked, blue-eyed philosopher king. Such a king might have been Ian Smith, who took the ball and the country and ran with it all the way to the end zone, only to be sacked by that most ebony of Marxist quarterbacks, Robert Gabriel Mugabe. Sir John Gielgud has more on a country less and less understood.
When Robert Mugabe's ZANU-PF party took power in 1980, white farmers suddenly became black farmers and orange farmers felt rather left out. All was well for 30 years. Palace building was at an all-time high. They'd never had it so good. In this last election, President Mugabe has proved a hard man to beat, as opposed to Morgan Tsvangirai, who responded quite well to repeated blows. During his campaign, Mr. Mugabe has appealed to the youth vote, those keen on bizarre metaphors.
My people are my machine gun.
And eventually the High Court. South African President Thabo Mbeki has interceded in an attempt to broker a fragile peace between the two sides and has proved to be quite the Kofi Annan in looks as well as complete and utter ineffectiveness. Sir John Gielgud alerting the media, Africa.
Well, there's a spring in our step, a song in our heart, and a dawning realisation that despite prohibitive interest rates, soaring food prices, unaffordable petrol and a general sense of global doom, we as a nation are absolutely fantastic. According to Rob Lees, Director of Labor Policy, the nation's ebullience is down to one man.
Oh, that's right. Yep, Kevin Rudd, no question. He's back home after a fantastic trip overseas. He's just announced the new GG. We've got the 2020 summit this weekend, and he said sorry a few months back. So these are exciting, progressive times we live in thanks to an exciting and progressive leader.
OK, well, let's talk about the appointment of the new Governor-General, Quentin Bryce.
So exciting, Sean. It's so progressive. And as you're no doubt aware, she is the first female GG in 107 years.
Yeah, the timing's interesting, though, isn't it?
How do you mean?
Well, the Prime Minister's plane is still pretty much taxiing on the tarmac. The seatbelt light's still on, but he's up, leaping up there, flinging open the overhead locker, announcing the momentous appointment.
Oh, well, it certainly is exciting and progressive.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but it's a bit calculated, isn't it?
No, I'm not following you.
Well, some might say that the timing's designed to deflect any potential criticism of the Prime Minister's neglect of domestic issues while he's been away.
Well, look, all I know is that Quentin Bryce will make an excellent Governor-General. And for Quentin, it's the culmination of a career devoted to civic responsibility.
Well, really, how much pride can she take in being appointed to a position that not a week earlier the Prime Minister has vowed to get rid of? Well, she's hardly going to see out a 5-year term, is she? She's basically a Trojan horse, wheeler to the gates of Yarralumla, a gift to the nation, but hiding inside her wooden equine framework is the Republican debate, ready to leap out under the cover of darkness and murder the Queen.
The Republican issue isn't scheduled to appear on the agenda until the 14th of May.
Isn't that the day of the budget?
Day after the budget.
Unconvincing. Overseas now, and Nepal looks like losing its monarchy again, although this time it's the result of a vote and not a self-inflicted mass murder. A 2001 drunken machine gun attack on the royal family by the then Crown Prince, followed by his post-massacre suicide, left his uncle Gyanendra as king, something he's never looked terribly happy about. It's probably the hat. Prakanda and his Maoists look like winning, which proves that a decade of kidnapping, violence and intimidation always triumphs over the tyranny of Hinduism. Meanwhile, next door, Chinese officials remain steadfast in their plan for the Olympic torch relay to pass through Tibet. Protesters say that to carry the torch to the summit of Mount Everest would, at nearly 30,000 feet, be the height of arrogance. Still in the same neck of the woods, and Burma's military rulers have published a proposed constitution. Whether the country will adopt it or not will be decided by referendum on May the 10th. It runs 194 pages, and Aung San Suu Kyi says there's not enough time to read it properly before they have to vote on it. Imelda Dean, you've read it. How did you find it?
Oh, I loved it. I was very impressed with the language.
Burmese?
Myanmarian. I loved the bold yet totally transparent way they gave the impression of democracy, while at the same time making a grotesque mockery of it and entrenching their own power.
Yes. And how do you think the Burmese people will find it?
Oh, by looking in the fiction section.
Imelda Dean, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Pledge.
To the home of the free now, and reporting to Congress last week on the situation in Iraq, General David Petraeus made it quite clear that any progress was fragile and reversible. Or in the handbook language of the military,
the champagne bottle's been pushed to the back of the refrigerator.
Wanda Nee Babcock joins us from our Washington Bureau. And Wanda, did the commander suggest any time frame for winning the war?
Well, no, Sean. The general dodged that question like a particularly elusive mole in a giant game of whack-a-mole. The American public, however, did have some thoughts on the matter. Asked how is it possible to define when the war in Iraq is actually won, the poll results were somewhat surprising. Well, 34% opted for when the Iraqi people can stand on their own one foot. 29% went with when automobiles run on fairy dust instead of gas. 17% chose just before the Blackwater inquiry hands down its decision. A surprising 14% said when Iraq is no longer referred to as another Vietnam, but another Disneyland. And 6% responded with when U.S. deaths are less regular and more occasional. Sean?
Yes?
Nothing. It's just a rhetorical device to motivate. Cutting back to you.
And very effective it is too. Thank you, Wanda. Makes no sense at all. Unless Wikipedia is wrong, and that's highly unlikely, the history of spaceflight is little more than 143 years old. It all began, allegedly, in the 1950s when the Soviet Union stunned the United States with the launch of Sputnik, the world's first satellite. Tonight, we look back at the moment when man first dipped his toe in the cosmic ocean and talk to this man, Arkady Slonimsky. He is Newstopia's Man in Time.
Nothing will save
It was my job to paint the word Sputnik on the side of the satellite, which is not as easy as you might think. Firstly, I was using special space paint, which is more viscous than normal paint and 12 times as heavy. Secondly, I was painting the letters onto a shiny curved surface, which I had never done before. Thirdly, I have never been a good speller, and I don't know if you've ever seen the Cyrillic alphabet, but we have some pretty weird-looking characters, let me tell you. Anyway, I did my job, and for my troubles I was paid 7 crusts of bread, which was the currency back in those times. They shot my wife too, because of the spelling mistakes, but I have since got another through a Russian bride agency.